Have you ever wondered why so many castles around the world are said to be haunted? Why do these ancient stone walls, once filled with kings, queens, knights, and battles, now echo with whispers of ghosts? Before we step into this shadowy journey together, take a few seconds to like this video, tell me where you are watching from, and subscribe to the channel, only if you are truly ready to explore the darkest secrets hidden behind castle gates. Now, let us begin. Imagine yourself standing before a massive fortress. Its towers claw at the night sky, its walls cold and silent, yet humming with stories older than memory. A chill runs down your spine, not just from the icy wind, but from the thought that you are not alone. Somewhere within those endless halls, footsteps might be following you. A shadow, perhaps, waiting just beyond the flicker of torchlight. Castles have always been symbols of power, war, and bloodshed. They are built not only with stone, but with sacrifice, betrayal, and grief. Every brick has soaked up centuries of pain, and pain, as many cultures believe, leaves an imprint. This is why so many legends of restless spirits cling to these places. A battlefield might fade into grasslands, but a castle stands holding its memories tight. From Scotland's windswept highlands to Japan's ancient wooden keeps, from the misty hills of Ireland to the fiery deserts of Rajasthan, haunted castles rise like monuments to fear and fascination. Some whisper with the laughter of a woman betrayed. Others groan with the agony of prisoners, chained for eternity. Some are said to guard gates to hell itself, while others protect secrets science still struggles to explain. And here's the real question. If you had the chance, would you dare to spend a night inside one of these haunted castles? Would curiosity win over fear, or would you run before the first candle flickered out? Picture yourself walking down a hallway, the portraits of long-dead nobles staring down at you, their eyes seeming almost alive. You tell yourself it is only imagination, until one of the frames creaks ever so slightly. Tonight in this journey, you won't just hear ghost stories. You will step into them. You will travel through time, through battlefields, through betrayals, through curses whispered on stormy nights. You will hear the science that tries to explain away the shadows, and the folklore that insists those shadows are real. And along the way, we will laugh too, because let us be honest, if a knight in rusty armor clanked his way down the hallway, you would probably scream first and then joke about it later. So get comfortable. Dim the lights if you dare. This story is not meant to terrify you into sleeplessness, but to wrap you in a blanket of mystery. Like a bedtime tale for grown-ups who still crave wonder. Castles are more than stone. They are living archives of human fear, ambition, and imagination. By the end of this journey, you may never look at an old fortress the same way again. You climb the cobbled streets of Edinburgh, Scotland's capital, and there it is, a fortress looming over the city like a stone crown. Edinburgh Castle has stood for more than 1,000 years, a witness to wars, betrayals, executions, and legends. But behind its cannons and ramparts lies something far stranger than history books admit, whispers of soldiers who never left. Picture yourself entering the castle gates. The air is damp, heavy, as though the stones themselves are breathing. Tourists shuffle past with cameras, but you, yes, you, feel a shiver that is not from the cold. Beneath the castle lies a network of tunnels and dungeons, places once used to hold prisoners of war. French soldiers, Spanish sailors, even colonial prisoners captured during America's Revolutionary War. Many died in the darkness below. People say some of them are still there. One story tells of a drummer boy. Centuries ago, the boy was sent into a newly discovered tunnel with a drum, ordered to beat it so soldiers above could follow his path. His drumming stopped suddenly. Soldiers rushed to find him, but the boy was gone. No trace, no explanation. Since then, on quiet nights, people swear they hear the faint sound of a drum echoing under the castle. Imagine lying in bed at midnight, and instead of silence, a single hollow boom. Boom. Boom rises from beneath your feet. And then there is the phantom piper. During World War I, soldiers reported hearing bagpipes playing within the castle walls, yet no musician was ever found. The haunting melody was said to come from deep underground, a reminder of Scotland's warriors long gone. If you have ever heard bagpipes in the mist, you know how eerie they can sound. Now imagine hearing them with no one in sight, the notes twisting through the fog like ghostly fingers. But Edinburgh Castle's hauntings are not limited to sound. Visitors often report being touched by invisible hands. Some describe sudden drops in temperature, or the sensation of breath on their necks when no one is behind them. A few even collapse in panic, claiming they saw a man in tattered uniform marching across the courtyard. Skeptics laugh it off as imagination, but the castle staff keep detailed logs of such encounters, and the list grows every year. Science offers explanations. Infrasound, low-frequency vibrations below human hearing, can cause unease, dizziness, and even hallucinations. Ancient castles, with their narrow passageways and stone chambers, are perfect for trapping and amplifying such frequencies. Combine that with the power of suggestion. You know this place is haunted, therefore your brain plays tricks, and suddenly the impossible seems plausible. But here's the twist. Even researchers who enter skeptical often leave unsettled. Paranormal investigators with modern equipment have recorded cold spots, electromagnetic spikes, and yes, strange sounds of drumming. One team captured a faint voice whispering in Gaelic, saying what they claimed was "Da minco, I am here." Whether ghost or glitch, the recording chilled everyone in the room. So let us ask the question, if you were standing in those tunnels, lantern in hand, and you heard a drumbeat echoing closer, would you run, or would you follow the sound? Could you resist curiosity, even knowing no one has ever solved the mystery of the missing drummer boy? The castle, after all, is not only haunted by soldiers. Witches were burned at its esplanade. Prisoners scratched desperate marks into the dungeon walls. Royalty plotted and murdered within its halls. Every corner is layered with human fear, ambition, and betrayal. And fear, more than any ghost, has the power to linger. So when you leave Edinburgh Castle and walk down the Royal Mile, the city lights glowing below, do not be surprised if you still hear faint footsteps behind you. It might just be another tourist. Or it might be someone who never left the castle at all. High in the Carpathian Mountains of Romania, where mist curls around black forests and wolves howl at the moon, a castle rises like a jagged tooth from the rock. Its name is Bran Castle. To most of the world, it is better known as Dracula's Castle. Now, imagine yourself walking through its arched gate. The courtyard is quiet, the stone cold under your feet. Tourists may chatter in the daylight, but when the sun sets, silence falls like a shroud. You glance at the narrow windows, half expecting pale eyes to be staring back. And perhaps, just perhaps, they are. The legend begins with a real man, Vlad E., also called Vlad the Impaler. He was a 15th century prince of Wallachia, notorious for his cruelty. His favorite method of execution, impaling his enemies on long wooden stakes, leaving them writhing in agony, their bodies lining the hills as a warning. Some say tens of thousands died this way. To his enemies, he was a monster. To his people, he was a protector. But stories like his never stay just history. They bleed into myth. When Irish author Bram Stoker wrote Dracula in 1897, he drew inspiration from tales of Vlad. Though Stoker never visited Romania, Bran Castle fit his description so well that the world adopted it as the Count's home. And so, Bran became forever tied to the vampire legend. But here's the twist. The haunting of Bran Castle is not just about vampires. Visitors have reported seeing ghostly figures gliding along the corridors. Some claim to hear whispers in Romanian, words they cannot understand. At night, strange cold spots bloom in the chapel, where priests once prayed for the souls of the dead. One guest swore they saw a woman in white drifting down the staircase, vanishing before reaching the bottom. Let us ask the chilling question, what would you do if while exploring Bran Castle you heard footsteps behind you, but turned and found only shadows? Would you keep climbing the narrow staircase, heart pounding, or would you bolt for the exit? Science again offers explanations. Old castles often creak, their drafts whistling through cracks, their acoustics bending sound in eerie ways. Our minds, primed by centuries of vampire stories, fill the silence with monsters. And yet, not everything can be dismissed so easily. Paranormal groups using modern recorders have captured odd electromagnetic pulses and even faint heartbeats where no living person stood. A trick of equipment or something older, something that thrives in darkness. The allure of Bran Castle lies in this balance, the line where fact and fiction blur. You stand in a fortress built for war, yet feel as though you have stepped into a Gothic novel. You read plaques about medieval history, but your imagination whispers of fangs and coffins. The very walls seem to hold two realities at once, stone and story, history and nightmare. And let us be honest, if you were stuck there overnight and a bat suddenly swooped past your face, you would probably scream, laugh nervously, and then immediately wonder, what if it is not just a bat? Bran Castle is more than Dracula's home. It is a symbol of how human fear and storytelling can transform history into legend. Whether you believe in ghosts, vampires, or simply the darkness of human cruelty, one truth remains: castles like this are never truly empty. They are filled with memory, with myth, and maybe, just maybe, with something watching from the shadows. Far from Europe's Gothic spires in the heart of Japan stands one of the most breathtaking castles in the world, Himeji Castle. Its white walls shine like a heron taking flight, earning it the nickname the White Heron Castle. It is a masterpiece of Japanese architecture, with sweeping roofs and towering keeps, so beautiful that you might think it could never hide anything dark. But beauty, as you will soon see, often conceals tragedy. Step inside the castle grounds in your imagination. You wander past immaculate gardens, sliding doors, and wooden corridors that creak with every step. Yet no matter how graceful the castle appears, there is one place that carries a chill strong enough to silence any laughter: the Well of Okiku. The story goes like this: centuries ago, a young servant woman named Okiku worked in the castle. She was loyal, kind, and dedicated to her duties. But one day, she uncovered a plot against her lord. A jealous samurai, angry that she rejected his advances, accused her of losing one of the 10 precious dishes in her care. In a culture where honor was everything, such an accusation was deadly. Okiku was tortured, beaten, and eventually thrown into the deep well within the castle grounds. Her body was lost, but her spirit never left. To this day, locals say her ghost rises from the well every night. She counts the dishes in a sorrowful voice: 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and then she screams in horror, realizing the 10th dish is missing. The scream is said to pierce the night like a blade, chilling even the bravest heart. Visitors who stand near the well sometimes swear they hear the faint sound of counting. Others report sudden dizziness, as if something unseen is pulling them toward the dark water below. Imagine leaning over, curious to see the bottom, when a pale hand reaches up from the shadows. Would you jump back, or would you be too paralyzed to move? Japanese culture often treats ghost stories, or kaiden, with respect. Unlike Western tales that portray ghosts as pure terror, many Japanese legends carry themes of sorrow, unfinished business, and injustice. Okiku is not just a monster. She is a woman wronged, her voice echoing with both grief and fury. Her story became so well known that it inspired countless plays, books, and even modern films. And here's where it gets fascinating. Scientists have studied the acoustics of the well. Its design amplifies faint noises, making whispers sound louder than they should. Combine that with human imagination, standing in a place where you already expect ghosts, and suddenly the impossible becomes real. Some even suggest that infrasound caused by underground water currents could trigger feelings of dread. Still, cultural memory is a powerful force. Generations of people have retold Okiku's story, each adding layers of fear and reverence. Today, tourists visit the well with mixed emotions, part curiosity, part respect, part terror. And perhaps that is the real haunting. Not a ghost in the well, but the echo of a tragedy too powerful to forget. So here's the question for you. If you were standing before Okiku's well at midnight and you heard the counting, 8, 9, would you wait for the scream, or would you run before it came? Deep in the rolling green fields of Ireland stands a fortress with a reputation darker than any fairy tale. This is Sleepless Castle, often called the most haunted castle in the world. Its stones are soaked with blood, its halls echo with screams of betrayal, and its legends speak of creatures not entirely human. Picture yourself standing before its gray towers. The wind howls across the hills, carrying whispers of ancient clans. Inside the walls lies a chapel so infamous that locals call it the Bloody Chapel. Centuries ago, the O'Carroll family who ruled the land were locked in bitter rivalries. One night, during a gathering, one brother, driven by greed and fury, murdered his own kin, a priest, right at the altar while Mass was being said. Blood splattered across the sacred walls, and from that night forward, the chapel became cursed. Visitors say they still feel the air grow heavy there, as though the stone itself remembers the violence. Some report seeing a flicker of light, as if a candle is still burning at the altar. Others swear they have heard chanting, though the chapel has been empty for centuries. Imagine stepping into the room, the silence pressing on your chest, when suddenly you hear the low murmur of prayers. But no one is there. And then, there is the elemental. This is no ordinary ghost. Described as a small, hunched figure with decayed features and a stench of rotting flesh, the elemental is said to appear when danger or betrayal is near. Paranormal investigators claim they have felt a foul odor, icy cold, and even the sensation of being watched by something ancient and malevolent. Some believe the O'Carrolls summoned it through dark rituals, while others say it was born from the violence of the land itself. Here's the chilling thought. What if you saw it, not a vague shadow, but a figure staring at you with empty sockets where eyes should be? Would you stand your ground, or would terror overwhelm you before you even had time to scream? Leap Castle hides more than ghosts. During renovations in the early 20th century, workers discovered a secret oubliette, a pit used as a dungeon. Inside were thousands of human bones, victims who had been thrown in and left to die. The discovery shocked historians, confirming that the castle had been a place of unimaginable cruelty. To this day, people claim to hear the cries of those forgotten souls when the night is at its darkest. Science again tries to explain. The foul smells may come from mold and stagnant air in the old stone walls. Feelings of dread may be caused by infrasound or toxins in the soil. But can science explain the moment when multiple witnesses describe the same decaying figure in the same room? Can it explain why electronic devices fail, batteries drain, and cameras refuse to capture images inside the chapel? The power of Leap Castle lies in this collision of history and horror. It is a place where betrayal, bloodshed, and superstition have fused into something unforgettable. Standing in the bloody chapel, you are not just surrounded by stone, you are surrounded by centuries of fear. So let me ask you, if you were handed a lantern and asked to spend just one night inside Leap Castle, would you dare? Would curiosity drive you forward? Or would your legs refuse to move? The choice, as always, is yours. In the Loire Valley of France, surrounded by vineyards and rolling hills, rises a castle so grand it has been called the Giant of the Loire. Château de Brissac, with its 7 stories and more than 200 rooms, seems like the perfect fairy tale palace. But behind the gilded curtains and elegant halls lies a tale of betrayal, jealousy, and a ghostly woman dressed in green. Walk through its vast corridors, in your imagination. Tapestries hang on the walls, chandeliers glitter overhead, and the scent of old wood and stone fills the air. But if you wander too far into the quiet chambers, you may feel a sudden chill. That is where she is said to linger, the spirit of Charlotte de Braze, remembered forever as La Dame Verte, the Green Lady. Her story begins in the 15th century. Charlotte was the illegitimate daughter of King Charles V of France, married off to Jacques de Brissac, the castle's lord. The marriage was loveless, marked by distance and bitterness. Charlotte sought comfort in the arms of another man. But Jacques discovered her betrayal. One night his rage exploded. In a fit of jealousy, he murdered both Charlotte and her lover within the castle walls. Their bodies were hidden, but their tragedy left a scar that never healed. From that time on, guests and servants reported seeing Charlotte's ghost. She appears as a woman in a green dress, her face pale and sorrowful. But when you look closer, her features seem broken, her eyes hollow, her mouth frozen in a scream that never fades. Some visitors claim she drifts silently through the castle at night, vanishing through locked doors. Others hear her weeping, soft and desperate, echoing through the stone halls. Now imagine yourself spending the night there. The chateau offers luxury suites, velvet curtains, and antique beds. But what if, just as you drift into sleep, you hear footsteps in your room? What if you open your eyes to see a woman in green standing at the foot of your bed, her eyes fixed on you? Would you speak? Would you pray, or would you freeze, unable to breathe until she fades into nothingness? Skeptics argue that the Green Lady is a legend designed to attract tourists. They point to drafts, tricks of light, or the human brain's tendency to find faces in shadows. And yet, even seasoned travelers who laugh at ghost stories often leave Chateau de Brissac shaken. Paranormal investigators have reported strange temperature drops and unexplained photographs showing a misty figure in emerald hues. But perhaps the haunting is not only supernatural, it is emotional. The Green Lady represents betrayal, jealousy, and the pain of a woman trapped in circumstances beyond her control. Her story resonates because it is not only about death, it is about love gone wrong, about rage destroying lives, about a cry for justice that was never answered. So here's the question for you. If you could spend a night in one of the chateau's gilded rooms, would you welcome the chance to meet the Green Lady, or would you keep the lights on, telling yourself she is only a story, while secretly praying that you never see a flash of green in the dark? In the deserts of Rajasthan, India, where golden sands stretch endlessly under a blazing sun, stands the ruins of Bangar Fort. Once a thriving city, it now lies abandoned, its crumbling walls echoing with silence. Locals call it the most haunted place in India, and perhaps one of the most cursed fortresses in the world. Step through its broken gate in your imagination. The sun begins to set and the air cools. You walk among roofless temples, cracked archways, and stone courtyards where weeds have taken root. A sense of unease creeps in, as if the land itself remembers something terrible. Unlike other castles, Bangar carries an official warning. The Indian government has posted signs at its entrance, forbidding anyone from staying after dark. Why? Because after sunset, the fort belongs not to the living, but to the dead. The legend begins with a sorcerer named Singhiya. He was skilled in black magic and fell in love with a princess named Ratnavati, known for her beauty and grace. Knowing he could never win her heart, he enchanted her perfume with a spell, hoping she would fall under his power. But Ratnavati saw through his trick. She poured the perfume onto a rock, and the enchanted stone rolled back, crushing Singhiya to death. With his dying breath, he cursed the city of Bangar, swearing it would never prosper. Soon after, the kingdom was attacked, its people slaughtered, its temples desecrated. The once thriving city became a ghost town, and according to locals, the curse still lingers. Visitors report strange shadows moving at dusk, whispers carried on the desert wind, and the faint sound of music and laughter, as if the city still remembers the lives it once held. Now imagine this. You are walking through the ruins at twilight, the sky painted orange and purple. Suddenly, you hear the sound of anklets jingling behind you. You turn. No one is there. Would you keep walking, or would you sprint for the gate before the night falls? Some scientists suggest the fort's eerie reputation is psychological. Its isolation, desolate landscape, and ruined beauty create a natural stage for fear. Others argue that the fort's construction, with its tight stone corridors, amplifies sounds and tricks the ear. But then, how do you explain the tourists who swear they were pushed, scratched, or even followed by unseen forces? Paranormal investigators who dared to spend time there claim their equipment failed. Batteries drained instantly and compasses spun wildly. One team even reported hearing a woman's voice on their recorders, a soft whisper in Hindi saying, "Chail Jao, go away." The haunting of Bangar is more than a ghost story. It is a cautionary tale about desire, betrayal, and curses that echo through centuries. Whether you believe in sorcery or not, the ruins remain a chilling reminder of how fear can turn a city into a graveyard. So here's the question. If you had the chance to step into Bangar Fort at midnight, knowing the gate would lock behind you, would you dare, or would you listen to the warning and never test the curse for yourself? In the forests of Germany, hidden among misty valleys and rolling hills, rises one of the most picturesque castles in Europe, Burg Eltz. Unlike many fortresses that fell into ruin, Burg Eltz still stands proudly, its towers rising like a dream above the trees. It looks like something out of a fairy tale, the kind of place where you would expect princesses and knights, not ghosts. But looks, as always, can deceive. Step across the stone bridge in your imagination. The castle greets you with timbered walls, steep roofs, and a courtyard that echoes with centuries of history. For over 800 years, Burg Eltz has been home to the same noble family. Wars raged around it, but the castle remained untouched. Yet within its walls shadows linger, whispers of knights who never left their post. Legend tells of a knight sworn to defend the honor of the castle's ladies. He fought bravely in a duel, but his opponent struck him down in the courtyard. His body was buried, but his spirit, they say, still patrols the grounds, clad in armor, sword in hand. Visitors walking at night claim to hear the metallic clang of footsteps on stone, echoing through empty corridors. Some even report seeing a shadowed figure standing at the gate, as though guarding the castle still. Now imagine you are alone in one of its candlelit halls. The air is heavy, filled with the scent of wood and wax. Suddenly, you hear the sound of steel scraping. You turn your head, nothing. Then, from the corner, a figure in armor steps forward, visor down, blade gleaming in the dim light. Would you bow in respect? Would you run? Or would you simply freeze, realizing that the knight has no face beneath his helm? The ghostly knights are not the only strange presences. Some guests swear they have seen a lady in white drifting through the upper rooms, her gown trailing as she searches for something or someone. Others feel sudden drafts of cold air, even on warm summer nights, as if invisible sentinels are brushing past them. Skeptics say it is all imagination, the creaks of old wood, the drafts from forest winds, the way shadows play tricks in candlelight. But paranormal enthusiasts argue that Berg Eltz, preserved so perfectly across centuries, acts like a time capsule, holding not only objects of history, but emotions, tragedies, and loyalties too strong to die. One chilling report comes from a guard who patrolled the castle at night. He claimed that as he walked past the armory, every sword on the rack began to vibrate softly, as though touched by unseen hands. Another visitor described hearing voices chanting in Latin, though no chapel service was being held. So here's a thought for you. If the loyalty of knights is so strong that it binds them even after death, would you feel honored or terrified to share their company? Could you sleep in a bedchamber, knowing armored footsteps might echo outside your door? Berg Eltz is a castle that wears its beauty proudly, but in the stillness of night, its elegance becomes something else entirely, a reminder that legends live not only in books, but in the very stones beneath your feet. On the banks of the River Thames in London stands one of the most infamous fortresses in the world, the Tower of London. For nearly 1,000 years it has been a palace, a prison, a place of torture and an execution ground. It is a monument of English history, and a monument of blood. To this day, many believe it is haunted by those who perished within its walls, including queens, princes, and traitors who never truly left. Imagine walking through the tower's gates. The stones loom above you, darkened by centuries of smoke and sorrow. Tourists chatter, but you feel something heavier in the air. This is not just a historic site, it is a graveyard of ambition and betrayal. The most famous ghost is Anne Boleyn, the ill-fated second wife of King Henry V. Accused of treason and adultery, she was executed here in 1536. Her ghost is said to wander the Tower Green, sometimes headless, carrying her severed head in her hands. Visitors describe seeing her pale figure kneeling in silent prayer, or drifting through the chapel where her remains were buried. Now picture this, you stand in that same chapel, when a woman in Tudor dress appears beside you. Her eyes meet yours, calm, resigned, and sorrowful, before she fades away. Would you run, or would you whisper, "Your Majesty," before she vanishes? Anne is not alone. Lady Jane Grey, the 9 Days Queen, also lingers here. A teenage monarch executed in 1554, she is often seen as a pale figure walking the battlements, her face etched with sadness. Even the young princes Edward and Richard, believed to have been murdered in the Bloody Tower, are said to appear as ghostly children, clutching each other's hands, their eyes wide with fear. And then there are darker presences. Guards have reported hearing screams from the torture chambers, the clank of chains, and sudden icy winds sweeping through sealed rooms. One guard swore he felt an unseen hand press against his throat, choking him, until he stumbled out of the chamber gasping for air. Another described seeing a bear, yes, a spectral bear, charging at him. A reminder of the royal menagerie that once existed here. Science offers explanations, stress, suggestion, and the weight of history itself. When you know thousands were executed, your mind becomes fertile ground for shadows. But can stress explain multiple guards fainting at the same time after seeing the same apparition? Can imagination explain why seasoned soldiers, not prone to fantasy, refuse to walk alone at night in certain towers? The Tower of London embodies the brutal side of monarchy. Kings and queens built their thrones on loyalty, but loyalty is fragile. When it broke, heads rolled. The ghosts here are not just eerie stories, they are reminders of power's terrible price. So here's the question for you. If you were locked inside the tower overnight, walking across the courtyard where queens once knelt for the axe, would you feel awe, terror, or both? And when the midnight bells rang, would you dare look over your shoulder just in case Anne Boleyn was standing there, her head cradled in her hands? Deep in the forests of the Czech Republic stands a castle unlike any other. Himeji Castle does not guard a trade route, nor does it overlook a river or city. In fact, it was built in the middle of nowhere, far from strategic importance. But legend says it was not built to keep enemies out, it was built to keep something inside. Beneath Himeji Castle lies what locals call a gateway to hell. Step into the courtyard, in your imagination. The walls rise around you, enclosing a silence so heavy it almost hums. At the heart of the castle lies a deep pit, said to descend endlessly into the earth. Before the castle was built, locals avoided the area, claiming strange creatures would crawl out of the hole at night, winged monsters half human and half beast. Farmers reported livestock disappearing, dragged away into the darkness. In the 13th century, when construction began, prisoners were offered freedom if they dared to descend into the pit on ropes. The first man lowered screamed in terror, begging to be pulled back up. When he emerged, his hair had turned white, his face aged decades in mere minutes. He died soon after, raving about creatures clawing at him in the dark. After that, the castle was constructed, its chapel deliberately placed over the pit, as though to seal it shut. Imagine kneeling in that chapel now. Candles flicker, shadows stretch across the walls. You feel a draft rising from the stone floor, colder than ice. Some visitors swear they hear growls echoing from beneath the earth, or see black shapes fluttering at the edge of vision. Paranormal investigators have recorded strange voices there, low, guttural, and in no known language. Skeptics say the pit is simply a deep cave, its drafts caused by underground air currents. But can air alone explain why animals refuse to approach the area, or why locals avoid the castle at night even to this day? The Nazis, fascinated by the occult, reportedly used Himeji Castle during World War I, conducting experiments in its halls. Some say they, too, believed the pit held supernatural power. Soldiers stationed there told stories of nightmares, sudden illness, and the sense of being watched by something not human. Now let us ask the question. If you were offered the chance to descend into the pit with only a lantern, would you dare? Could curiosity overpower the fear of what might be waiting at the bottom? Or would you, like the villagers of old, choose never to go near it at all? Himeji Castle stands today not as a ruin, but as a strange, silent monument to fear. Its walls are pristine, its setting serene, yet its reputation is darker than any battlefield fortress. It is a reminder that sometimes castles are not built for war or glory, but to keep the shadows of the earth locked away. Clinging to the side of a sheer limestone cliff in Slovenia, Poveglia Castle looks like something out of a fantasy painting. Half fortress, half cave, it rises dramatically from the rock face, its towers jutting out from the mountain itself. But behind its beauty lies a legend of rebellion, cunning, and a death so strange that it gave birth to one of the castle's most chilling ghost stories. Imagine standing at the base of the cliff, staring up at the walls that merge seamlessly into stone. The castle was nearly impregnable, connected to a network of secret tunnels winding through the mountain. To its enemies, it seemed like a fortress blessed by the earth itself. But its most famous inhabitant, the knight Erasm of Poveglia, proved that no wall could protect him from fate. Erasm was a nobleman and a notorious robber baron in the 15th century. A kind of Slovenian Robin Hood, he defied the Habsburg rulers, raiding their caravans and giving shelter to those who opposed imperial control. His defiance made him a hero to some, but a target to others. When he killed a commander loyal to the Habsburgs, the empire laid siege to Poveglia Castle. Now here's where the story takes a strange turn. The siege dragged on for months, but Erasm seemed untouchable. Thanks to the secret tunnels, he smuggled in food and supplies from the outside. He even mocked his enemies by hurling fresh cherries down at them while they starved in the cold. His legend grew with each passing week. But betrayal, as always, came from within. A servant loyal to the besiegers signaled the enemy when Erasm went to his private lavatory, a small room built high in the castle wall. At that moment, a cannon was fired. The shot ripped through the stone and struck the knight where he sat. And so, the rebel of Poveglia met his end in one of the most bizarre deaths in history. Today, visitors claim his spirit still lingers. Some say they hear footsteps echoing in the tunnels, though no one is there. Others report sudden drops of icy air in the very chamber where he died. A few even claim to see a shadowy figure of a man in armor, standing defiantly in the courtyard before fading into the cliff. Skeptics suggest drafts from the caves create the strange sounds and chills. But can drafts explain why multiple guests report seeing the same armored man in the same spot, centuries apart? Himeji Castle thrives on this mixture of history and ghost story. It is a place where stone and legend are inseparable. You walk its halls and feel as though the mountain itself is alive, remembering the rebellion, the laughter, the betrayal, and the thunder of cannons. So let me ask you, if you were offered a night inside Himeji Castle, with the wind howling through the caves and the thought of Erasm still standing guard, would you feel safe? Or would every echo make you wonder if the rebel knight had returned, not to protect you, but to remind you how he died? In the quiet countryside of Denmark, surrounded by fields and misty marshes, stands Himeji Castle. At first glance, it looks peaceful, an elegant white structure, more like a noble residence than a place of terror. Yet Himeji holds one of the most haunted reputations in all of Scandinavia. Locals whisper of not one, but 3 spirits who linger here, each with a story etched in sorrow, betrayal, or defiance. Step through its gates in your imagination. The courtyard is calm, birds circle overhead, but the walls seem to remember more than they show. Guides will tell you about the 3 ghosts, the Grey Lady, the White Lady, and the Restless Earl. The Grey Lady is said to be a former servant of the castle. Long ago, she suffered a painful illness, but was treated kindly by the Lord of Himeji. After her death she returned, not in anger but in gratitude. Guests report seeing her drifting quietly through the halls, carrying a small lamp, checking on rooms as if still serving the household. Witnesses describe her presence as oddly comforting, like a guardian watching in silence. The White Lady's tale is much darker. She was a noblewoman who fell in love with a commoner. When her father discovered the affair, he ordered her sealed alive within the castle walls to preserve the family's honor. Centuries later, during renovations, workers discovered a skeleton in a white dress behind the stones. Since then, visitors claim to see her wandering the corridors, her face pale, her eyes filled with endless sadness. Sometimes she pauses by windows, staring out as though waiting for the lover she never saw again. And then there is the Restless Earl. In the 16th century, James Hepburn, the 4th Earl of Bothwell and husband of Mary, Queen of Scots, was imprisoned in Himeji Castle after falling out of favor. He died there in misery, chained in a cold cell. His spirit is said to still roam the grounds, sometimes on horseback, clad in armor, eyes burning with fury. People claim to hear the sound of hooves pounding in the courtyard at night, though no horse is ever found. Now imagine yourself staying overnight in Himeji. You wake at midnight to the sound of slow footsteps in the hallway. The air grows colder, your breath visible in the moonlight. Do you pray for the Grey Lady, hoping for comfort, or do you fear the White Lady, her sorrow clinging to you like mist? And if you heard the thundering hooves of the Earl, would you dare look out the window or pull the blankets tighter and shut your eyes? Skeptics argue these stories are products of old folklore, fueled by the castle's age and isolation. But paranormal investigators insist they have recorded unusual activity, cold spots, voices in empty rooms, and even shadows caught on camera where no one stood. The tale of the White Lady's skeleton hidden in the wall is not just a ghost story, it is a documented discovery. Himeji Castle stands today as a hotel, welcoming guests into its historic rooms. Some stay for the luxury, others for the thrill of meeting its famous ghosts. But all leave with the same feeling, that within its walls, history is never silent. So let me ask you, if you had the chance to spend a night there, knowing 3 spirits might visit your room, would you welcome them, or would you sleep with the lights on, whispering to yourself that ghosts are only stories? In the Austrian Alps, nestled among pine forests and snow-covered peaks, stands Himeji Castle. Its towers rise stark against the mountain sky, a fortress that has witnessed some of the darkest chapters of European history. Today, it is often called the Witch's Castle, but its stories go beyond witchcraft, reaching into legends of werewolves and bloodthirsty hunts. Imagine approaching the castle on a foggy evening. The path winds through the woods, the air damp and heavy with the scent of pine. As you step inside its courtyard, the silence is unsettling. The walls, centuries old, seem to breathe with the weight of suffering. This was not just a castle, it was a courtroom, a prison, and an execution ground. In the 17th century, Musham became infamous during the Salzburg witch trials. More than 100 people, mostly women, but also men and children, were accused of witchcraft. They were dragged to the castle, interrogated, tortured, and many were executed. Locals believed the surrounding villages had been plagued by sorcery, their livestock dying mysteriously, crops failing, and children falling ill. Musham was seen as the place where such evil would be purged. But in truth, it became a place of terror, where innocent lives ended screaming in the dungeons. And then there were the werewolf trials. In the 18th century, villagers claimed that a pack of werewolves roamed the forests, attacking cattle and even people. Suspects, usually outcasts, the poor, or those who lived alone, were brought to Musham. Some confessed under torture to being shapeshifters who hunted by moonlight. Many were executed, their deaths feeding the legend of the castle as a den of supernatural evil. Visitors today report feeling uneasy in its chambers. Some say they hear the cries of women echoing in the halls, their voices pleading for mercy. Others describe the sensation of being watched by unseen eyes. The dungeons, damp and narrow, are said to still carry the scent of iron and blood. Imagine descending into that underground chamber with only a torch, hearing dripping water, then suddenly a whisper right beside your ear. Skeptics say these stories are fueled by history itself. When you know the walls once held so much pain, your imagination naturally fills in the shadows. But paranormal investigators insist Musham holds more than memory. Cold spots, strange lights, and unexplained scratches on stone walls have been recorded. One visitor claimed they saw a figure hunched in the corner of a dungeon, its body twisted, its face wolf-like, before it vanished. So here's the chilling thought. What if the legends of Musham are not only about the past? What if something still roams the forests outside, howling when the moon is full? And if you found yourself wandering too far at night, would you believe it was just a wolf or something much darker waiting for you? Musham Castle stands as a reminder of fear's power. Fear created witches, fear created werewolves, and fear gave rise to executions that claimed innocent lives. Yet fear also lingers, shaping shadows, turning wind into whispers, and leaving every visitor wondering whether history's ghosts are still alive in its halls. Far from Europe's misty hills in Cape Town, South Africa, stands a fortress built not of romance but of empire, the Castle of Good Hope. Constructed in the 17th century by the Dutch East India Company, it was meant to be a symbol of trade and control at the southern tip of Africa. But behind its sturdy stone walls are tales of imprisonment, cruelty, and restless spirits that still haunt its corridors. Picture yourself entering the five-pointed bastion, its geometry perfect for cannons but unnerving in its precision. The courtyard seems calm in daylight, tourists snapping photos, children running across the cobblestones. Yet as the sun sets, shadows creep along the walls, and the fortress becomes something else entirely. One of the most famous legends is that of the Screaming Soldier. In the 1700s, a soldier was sentenced to death for desertion. He was dragged through the courtyard, beaten, and executed. But the story says that before he died, he let out a scream so piercing that it echoed through the walls for hours. Even after his death, the scream continued to be heard. Guards on night patrol reported hearing it, sharp and sudden, making their hearts race. To this day, visitors claim that a blood-curdling cry sometimes erupts out of the silence, startling everyone nearby. Another ghostly figure is the Lady in Grey. For centuries, staff and guests spoke of a woman in a gray cloak who wandered the grounds, sobbing into her hands. No one knew her story, until 1947, when workers unearthed a skeleton beneath the castle during renovations. After the remains were given a proper burial, the Lady in Grey was seen no more. Her departure gave eerie confirmation to the idea that the fortress had been keeping secrets buried beneath its foundations. And then there is the spectral figure of Governor Peter Gisbert van Noot. In 1728, he ordered the execution of several soldiers. Later that same day, he was found dead in his office, his face twisted in terror. Witnesses claimed they heard voices condemning him before his sudden collapse. His ghost, some say, still stalks the ramparts, a ruler forever judged by those he killed. Now imagine, you are alone on the castle wall at night. The city lights glow in the distance, but inside the bastion, silence reigns. Suddenly a scream shatters the air, so sharp it makes your skin prickle. Do you run for the gate, or do you force yourself to look, half expecting to see a soldier in tattered uniform, his mouth open in eternal agony? Skeptics point out that old buildings carry echoes, and Cape Town's winds can produce strange noises as they whip through stone passages. But how do you explain the consistency of the reports, generation after generation, all describing the same scream in the same place? The Castle of Good Hope is more than a relic of colonial power. It is a reminder that every empire, no matter how strong its walls, is built on human suffering, and sometimes that suffering refuses to stay silent. So here's the question. If you were offered a night tour of the Castle of Good Hope, knowing that silence could at any moment erupt into a scream from centuries past, would you dare walk those walls, or would you decline, telling yourself some echoes are better left unheard? High above the Rhine Valley in Germany, perched on a rugged hill, stand the ruins of Frankenstein Castle. At first glance, the name alone stirs imagination. Could this be the birthplace of Mary Shelley's legendary monster? While historians debate the connection, locals whisper of strange experiments, alchemy, and restless spirits that still haunt the crumbling towers. Picture yourself walking among the ruins. The ivy-covered stones glow faintly in the moonlight. The wind whistles through empty windows, carrying with it the scent of damp earth and moss. The silence is heavy, but you cannot shake the feeling that the walls are watching you. The legend centers on Johann Conrad Dippel, a real historical figure born at the castle in 1673. Dippel was a controversial alchemist, physician, and occultist. He was rumored to experiment with corpses, attempting to transfer souls from one body to another. Some stories claim he created a concoction called Dippel's oil, which he believed could extend life or perhaps even resurrect the dead. Though evidence is scarce, his dark reputation merged with the castle's atmosphere, inspiring tales that echo Mary Shelley's Frankenstein, written more than a century later. Visitors say the castle is not merely haunted by stories, but by presences. Ghost hunters report hearing footsteps on staircases that no longer exist, or voices whispering in the dark chambers. A few claim to have seen a tall, shadowy figure moving among the ruins, its shape vaguely human but distorted, as if stitched together from broken parts. Imagine yourself standing in the castle's chapel at night. The roof is gone, the stars gleam above. Suddenly, a low growl echoes from the crypt below. You shine your lantern, but nothing stirs. And yet the air grows colder, your heartbeat faster, as if something unseen has just stepped into the space with you. Would you call out, or would you run before curiosity doomed you to discover what lay in the shadows? Skeptics argue that Frankenstein Castle's reputation was inflated by Mary Shelley's novel and by local folklore eager to attract tourists. They point out that ruins, by nature, are eerie places where the mind easily fills in the gaps. But does imagination explain the recurring reports of glowing lights over the hill, or the sound of chains rattling in the dead of night? Every Halloween, locals gather at Frankenstein Castle for festivals filled with costumes and ghost stories. Actors play monsters, witches, and ghouls, bringing life to the legend. Yet many claim the real hauntings happen after the visitors leave, when the torches burn low and the ruins return to silence. That is when the shadows seem longer, the night colder, and the whispers harder to dismiss. So let me ask you, if you stood among those ruins, with the moon high and the valley below cloaked in mist, would you believe the monster was only fiction? Or would a part of you wonder if Mary Shelley merely put into words what had already been lurking in Frankenstein Castle for centuries? In the wilds of Northumberland, England, stands Chillingham Castle, a place whose very name seems to carry a chill. With its thick stone walls, medieval towers, and long history as both fortress and residence, it looks like the setting for a Gothic novel. But what makes Chillingham infamous are not its battlements, it is its ghosts. Many call it the most haunted castle in England. Imagine stepping through its iron gates. The courtyard echoes with the sound of crows, the air damp and cool. Once, this castle stood on the violent border between England and Scotland. Soldiers marched here, prisoners suffered here, and countless lives ended within its walls. The past still seems to seep through the cracks. One of the most terrifying rooms is the dungeon. Prisoners were thrown into pits, left in darkness, often starving or slowly tortured. The torture chamber itself remains intact, complete with racks, spiked chairs, and an iron maiden. Visitors swear they can feel waves of despair pressing down on them. Some even claim to hear faint screams when the chamber is silent. But Chillingham's most famous ghost is not a tortured soldier, it is a child. The Blue Boy is said to haunt the castle's pink room. For centuries, guests reported being awakened at midnight by the sound of a child crying. A blue flash of light would appear, and the figure of a boy dressed in blue would emerge from the wall. Then, suddenly, he would vanish with a heart-wrenching scream. In the 20th century, during renovations, workers discovered the bones of a child, along with fragments of blue cloth hidden within the wall. Since then, sightings of the Blue Boy have lessened, but some say his spirit still lingers, calmer now, yet unwilling to leave completely. Other presences are less gentle. A lady in white has been seen gliding down corridors, her face sad and pale. Some claim she is the ghost of a noblewoman imprisoned by her own family, left to starve. In the courtyard, visitors feel icy hands brush against their skin, though no one is there. Now imagine, you are staying overnight at Chillingham. Midnight comes. The castle is silent, except for the ticking of an old clock. Suddenly, a faint sob echoes in the corridor. You rise, open the door, and see a flicker of blue light moving slowly toward you. Would you step forward, trying to comfort the boy, or would you slam the door shut, your heart racing, praying he passes by? Skeptics insist the stories are exaggerated. Shadows, drafts, and the suggestive power of knowing Chillingham's bloody history. But even they admit the castle has an unsettling atmosphere. Paranormal investigators report cold spots, sudden surges of electromagnetic energy, and disembodied voices captured on tape. Chillingham Castle today welcomes tourists with ghost tours, proudly embracing its haunted reputation. Yet beneath the theatrics lies something deeper, a building that has absorbed centuries of violence, loss, and grief. Its ghosts, whether real or imagined, are echoes of lives cut short. So here's the question for you. If you were offered the chance to spend a night in the Pink Room, knowing the Blue Boy might appear at the foot of your bed, would you dare? And if you heard a child's cry in the darkness, would you comfort him, or pray you never see his face at all? In the rugged Carpathian Mountains of Romania, perched on a rocky hilltop, stands Bran Castle. With its turrets, narrow stairways, and looming battlements, it looks every bit like the Castle of Nightmares. Though often linked to the legend of Count Dracula, its real history is tangled with warlords, folklore, and whispers of blood that make it one of the most haunting places in Eastern Europe. Picture yourself standing at its gates as twilight falls. The forest around you is thick, the mountain wind sharp against your skin. The walls rise above, jagged and forbidding. Tourists may visit during the day, but at night, Bran Castle belongs to the shadows. The Dracula connection comes from Bram Stoker's 1897 novel. Though Stoker never visited Romania, his description of Dracula's fortress resembles Bran. The myth merged with history, linking the castle to Vlad the Impaler, Prince Vlad I of Wallachia, notorious for his cruelty. Vlad was said to impale thousands of enemies, leaving fields of corpses as warnings. While it is uncertain if he ever lived in Bran Castle, the association was enough to turn the fortress into Dracula's home in the popular imagination. Inside, the castle is a labyrinth of winding halls and staircases. Visitors often describe a strange heaviness in the air, as if centuries of fear have soaked into the stones. Some claim to feel watched as they climb the narrow steps. Others report sudden chills or the sense of unseen figures drifting past. Guides tell stories of women in white seen in the courtyard and shadows crossing doorways where no one stands. Now imagine yourself alone in the castle at midnight. The torches sputter, casting long flickering shadows. A door creaks somewhere deep in the fortress. Then you hear it, the faint sound of footsteps following you. You turn, but the corridor is empty. Would you keep walking, whispering that it is just your mind playing tricks? Or would you break into a run, certain that something is behind you, waiting to sink its fangs into your neck? Skeptics dismiss these fears as a mix of tourist hype and Romania's Gothic folklore. They say Dracula is fiction, and the castle is nothing more than stone and history. Yet paranormal investigators argue otherwise. Some claim to have recorded whispers in Romanian, warning them to leave. Others captured sudden bursts of electromagnetic activity, or photographs showing faces in the windows. Faces that were not there when the picture was taken. Bran Castle thrives on this dual identity, both tourist attraction and Gothic legend. By day, it is a museum, filled with artifacts of medieval life. By night, in imagination and whispers, it transforms into the seat of Dracula himself, where the line between history and horror blurs. So here's the question. If you were offered the chance to spend a night inside Bran Castle with only the moonlight seeping through its towers, would you dare, or would the thought of unseen footsteps and fangs in the dark keep you far away? In Japan, rising gracefully above the city of Himeji, stands a masterpiece of architecture, Himeji Castle. Known as the White Heron Castle for its elegant, wing-like roofs, it is one of the most beautiful castles in the world. Yet beneath its beauty lies a tragic tale of betrayal, and a ghost story that has haunted the castle for centuries, the legend of Okiku and the Cursed Well. Picture yourself walking through the castle grounds at dusk. The white walls glow softly in the fading light, and the wooden corridors creak beneath your feet. Amid the elegance, a well sits quietly in the courtyard. Locals call it Okiku's Well. To this day, people throw coins into it, whispering prayers. But they also whisper of cries that rise from its depths on moonlit nights. The legend begins in the 15th century. Okiku was a servant working in the castle for a powerful samurai. She was loyal and honest, but she caught the eye of her master, who tried to force her into his embrace. When she refused, he tricked her. He claimed that she had lost one of the family's precious dishes, 10 priceless heirlooms. He hid one and accused her of theft, a crime punishable by death. Okiku searched desperately, but could not find the missing plate. In despair, she threw herself into the castle well, her body swallowed by the darkness. From that moment, strange things began to happen. Each night, people reported hearing Okiku's ghost counting from the bottom of the well, 1, 2, 3, until she reached 9. Then came a scream, shrill and agonized, as she realized the 10th plate was still missing. Some claimed her pale figure rose from the well, her hair dripping wet, her face twisted in sorrow and rage. Now imagine, you are standing by the well on a quiet night. The wind is still. The moonlight shines on the water's surface. Suddenly, you hear a faint voice counting. 1, 2, 3. Would you lean closer, straining to hear the 10th count? Or would you run, afraid that if she reached 9, her scream would shatter not only the silence but your sanity? Skeptics say the tale of Okiku is simply folklore, a story meant to warn about power, betrayal, and the fate of women in feudal Japan. Yet the persistence of her legend suggests otherwise. Even today, visitors and castle staff whisper of eerie chills near the well, or strange sounds echoing through the courtyard after dark. Himeji Castle is both beauty and sorrow. By day, it is a shining national treasure, a symbol of Japan's resilience and artistry. By night, it becomes a place where history and ghostly whispers intertwine. Okiku's tale is not just a ghost story, it is a reminder of injustice, and of how the cries of the wronged can echo across centuries. So let me ask you, if you were offered the chance to peer into Okiku's well at midnight, would you dare count with her? Or would you step away, unwilling to face the scream that still haunts the White Heron Castle? On the rocky crags of Castle Rock in Scotland's capital, Edinburgh Castle dominates the skyline. For centuries, it has been a royal residence, a military fortress, and a prison of war. But beneath its grandeur lies a tapestry of hauntings, stories of ghostly soldiers, restless prisoners, and one mysterious piper whose tune still echoes through the underground tunnels. Picture yourself climbing the steep hill toward the fortress. The city lights shimmer below, the wind whips around the stone battlements, and the sound of bagpipes seems to linger in the air, except no musician is there. Locals say this is the music of the phantom piper. The story goes that centuries ago, tunnels were discovered beneath the castle, stretching into the city. To explore them, A young piper was sent down playing his bagpipes so his location could be tracked from above. The music echoed through the streets as he marched deeper and deeper, until it suddenly stopped. The boy never returned. To this day, people claim to hear faint bagpipe music beneath the castle, especially at night, as though the piper is still wandering, lost forever. But the piper is not the only ghost. Edinburgh Castle has been the site of countless battles, imprisonments, and executions. Soldiers report seeing shadowy figures in uniform patrolling the walls, muskets slung over their shoulders. Tourists describe feeling a sudden chill on their skin, or the sensation of being followed by invisible footsteps. Some have even claimed to see the apparition of a headless drummer, beating his ghostly drum to warn of danger. One of the darkest places is the dungeon. Prisoners of war from the American Revolution, the Napoleonic Wars, and other conflicts were held here. Many died of disease, hunger, or despair. Visitors to the dungeons today often report strange knocks on the walls, whispers in foreign tongues, and the overwhelming feeling of hopelessness pressing on their chests. Now imagine standing inside the great hall at midnight. The torches flicker, the vast chamber empty. Then, faintly, you hear the slow beat of a drum or the drone of distant bagpipes. Would you stand still listening in awe, or would you flee, afraid that the unseen soldiers were marching straight toward you? Skeptics argue that Edinburgh's ghostly reputation comes from its history and the city's Gothic atmosphere. But paranormal investigators insist the evidence is strong: cold spots, electronic failures, and recordings of footsteps and music where no one was present. Some even claim to have captured photographs of misty figures in tartan patterns, as if ghostly Highland soldiers still stand guard. Edinburgh Castle is more than Scotland's crown jewel. It is a place where history and legend intertwine, where the echoes of bagpipes and drums remind us that war leaves scars not just on the living, but on the land itself. So let me ask you, if you were offered the chance to walk through its underground tunnels, knowing the Phantom Piper's tune might begin again at any moment, would you dare, or would you step back, unwilling to risk joining him in eternal silence beneath the city? We return once more to Ireland, to the brooding silhouette of Leap Castle. Earlier, you learned about the bloody chapel and the horrific betrayals that stained its walls. But the story of Leap Castle is too vast, too dark, to be contained in one telling. There is another presence here, older than the O'Carroll clan, older even than the stone walls themselves, a spirit many call simply the Elemental. Imagine standing at the threshold of the bloody chapel at night. The moonlight seeps through the broken roof, painting silver lines across the cold stone floor. The silence is thick, but then you catch a stench so foul it twists your stomach: rot, decay, sulfur. And before you can steady yourself, you feel it, a pressure in the air, as though something unseen is watching, moving, waiting. Witnesses describe the Elemental as a grotesque figure, small and hunched, with rotting flesh and hollow sockets where eyes should be. It does not always appear, but when it does, terror lingers for years. Some say it can touch the living, leaving them faint, sick, or marked with scratches. Others believe it feeds on fear itself, growing stronger the more it is acknowledged. One chilling account comes from the early 20th century. A visitor exploring the castle suddenly felt the air turn freezing cold. A foul smell surrounded her. Then, in the shadows of the chapel, she saw a hunched figure staring directly at her. Its skin was gray, its face twisted, its eye sockets empty. She collapsed, and when she woke, she swore she still felt its breath on her cheek. But the Elemental is not the only horror that Leap Castle hides. The oubliette discovered in the early 1900s revealed thousands of human remains, men, women, children, all thrown into a pit to die. Paranormal experts argue that the sheer magnitude of suffering in those walls created a vortex, a wound in reality, where something unnatural could take root. The Elemental, they say, might not be a ghost of a single person at all, but the embodiment of centuries of death and betrayal. Now imagine yourself in that chamber. You hold a lantern, its light flickering. Every breath feels heavy, and your chest tightens as though the air itself rejects you. Then you sense it, something moving, crawling closer. You hear nothing, but your instincts scream to run. Would you flee, or would you force yourself to turn and face it, knowing the sight could scar your mind forever? Skeptics claim that the stories are exaggerations fueled by suggestion and folklore. The foul smells, they argue, come from mold and gases trapped in the old stone. The feelings of dread are psychological, born of knowing the castle's bloody history. Yet even skeptics leave Leap Castle uneasy. Too many witnesses across centuries describe the same thing: the foul odor, the cold air, the twisted figure with hollow eyes. Leap Castle today is privately owned, but it remains a magnet for ghost hunters. Those who enter often leave shaken, insisting the elemental is no story, it is something real, ancient, and malignant. So here's the question. If you had the chance to stand inside Leap Castle, alone in the bloody chapel, knowing the elemental might emerge from the shadows, would you risk it? Would your curiosity outweigh your fear, or would you step back, unwilling to face the embodiment of centuries of death? On the serene shores of Lake Geneva in Switzerland rises a vision of fairy tales, Château de Chillon. With its turrets reflected in the blue water, and the Alps looming in the distance, it looks like a painting come to life. Yet behind its beauty lies centuries of imprisonment, torture, and whispers of ghosts who never left their chains behind. Imagine approaching by boat, the waves lapping against the stone walls. Tourists admire its beauty by day, but as the sun sinks, shadows stretch across its towers, and the castle's darker side awakens. For centuries, Chillon was used as a prison. Its damp underground chambers, carved directly into the rock, once held countless prisoners of war, heretics, and political dissidents. Chains are still bolted to the walls, rusted but intact, a reminder of the misery endured. The most famous prisoner was François Bonivard, a 16th-century monk and reformer who spent 6 years chained in the dungeon. His story inspired Lord Byron, who visited the castle in 1816 and carved his name into one of the pillars. Byron's poem, The Prisoner of Chillon, forever tied the fortress to suffering and resistance. But Bonivard is not the only soul said to remain. Visitors claim to hear footsteps echoing in empty halls, as though guards still patrol. Some describe the rattle of chains clinking in the dark, or the faint moans of men long dead. Others report sudden drops in temperature, their breath misting even in summer, as though unseen prisoners still exhale in despair. One chilling tale speaks of a woman who vanished near the castle centuries ago. Locals whisper she drowned in the lake, or was imprisoned and silenced. At night, some visitors claim to see her pale figure gliding across the water toward the castle, her eyes hollow, her dress billowing like mist. Now imagine standing in the dungeon. The lake water seeps in through cracks, dripping steadily. The stone floor is uneven, and the air reeks of damp stone and rust. You close your eyes and then you hear it, the dragging of chains. Slow, metallic, drawing nearer. Would you open your eyes, prepared to face the unseen prisoner, or would you keep them shut, terrified of what might stand before you? Skeptics say the stories are fueled by Byron's romanticism and the castle's atmosphere. Old buildings creak, water echoes, and imagination does the rest. Yet paranormal investigators record unexplained phenomena, cold spots, whispers caught on tape, even shadows that appear in photographs. Château de Chillon today is one of Switzerland's most visited landmarks, a place of beauty and history. But its dungeons remind every visitor that fairy tale towers often hide grim truths. The lake reflects its turrets, but beneath that reflection lie centuries of suffering, chained forever in the stone. So let me ask you, if you had the chance to spend a night locked in Chillon's dungeon, with only the sound of water dripping in the silence, would you dare, or would the thought of chains dragging through the dark send you fleeing back into the night? Deep in the forests of the Czech Republic stands Himeji Castle, a fortress with a sinister reputation. Unlike most castles, Himeji was not built to guard trade routes or defend against enemies. Instead, legends say it was constructed to seal something in. At its heart lies a mysterious pit, so deep that no one has ever reached the bottom. Locals call it a gateway to hell itself. Picture yourself standing in the courtyard. The castle's Gothic walls rise around you, but instead of feeling secure, you feel trapped. The silence of the forest presses against the stone. Somewhere below, the earth hides a secret older than the castle itself. The story goes that before Himeji was built, villagers feared the pit. Strange creatures were said to crawl out at night, half human, half beast, with wings like bats. Travelers vanished, and livestock was found torn apart. Terrified, the people begged for help. The rulers of Bohemia, ordered a fortress to be built directly over the pit, sealing it with stone, and a chapel was constructed above it to trap the evil below. But even then, the pit resisted. Prisoners condemned to death were once offered pardon if they allowed themselves to be lowered into the hole. The first man screamed after only a few moments, begging to be pulled up. When he emerged, his hair had turned white, and his face was twisted in terror. He died days later, whispering of creatures waiting in the dark. Visitors today say they feel overwhelming dread near the chapel. Some report scratching sounds rising from beneath the floor, or cold winds blowing upward as if the earth itself were exhaling. Paranormal investigators have claimed to record growls and screams echoing from the stones. Others insist they have seen shadowy figures moving across the courtyard at night, shapes that vanish when approached. Now imagine yourself standing above the sealed pit. The chapel is silent, candles flickering. Suddenly, the flames bend as if pushed by a breath from below. You hear faint whispers in a language you do not understand. Would you kneel to listen, daring to hear what speaks from the abyss, or would you run, unwilling to risk opening your mind to whatever waits in the dark? Skeptics argue that Huska's legends are nothing more than medieval superstition, crafted to explain natural caves and the dangers of the wilderness. But the persistence of the stories, century after century, keeps the fear alive. Even hardened travelers admit there is something profoundly unsettling about the castle, as though it was not built for people at all, but against something not human. Himeji Castle remains one of Europe's strangest fortresses, a place that seems less like a residence and more like a lock on a prison no one dares to open. So here's the question. If you had the chance to step into that chapel and stand directly over the sealed pit, would you? Would curiosity drive you to lean closer, to see if the whispers rise again, or would you step back, leaving the gate closed, unwilling to risk meeting what lies beneath? Hidden deep within a forested valley, along the Moselle River in Germany, stands Burg Eltz, a castle untouched by time. With its towers rising like something from a fairy tale, it has been owned by the same family for over 800 years. Unlike many castles, it was never destroyed in war, nor abandoned to ruin. Yet, even a place as beautiful and well-preserved as Burg Eltz carries shadows, and the whispers of spirits who remain bound to honor, betrayal, and eternal duty. Imagine walking up the winding path that leads through the trees. The first sight of the castle is breathtaking. Its timbered towers rise above misty woods as though guarding secrets older than the stones themselves. By day, it is alive with tourists. By night, the forest grows dark, the castle quiets, and a night spirit is said to resume his watch. One legend speaks of Agnes Eltz, a noblewoman of the family in the 15th century. Promised in marriage to a knight she did not love, she resisted fiercely. When the knight came to claim her, the story says she armed herself and fought him in the castle. Though she was killed, her courage became legend. To this day, some visitors say they have seen a figure of a young woman in armor, her ghost still defending her honor within the halls. But the most enduring presence is that of a knight who walks the castle walls. Guests and staff have reported seeing a tall figure in armor patrolling the ramparts at night. His face is never visible beneath the helm, but his footsteps echo with a metallic ring. Some believe he was a knight who swore to protect the Eltz family even in death, continuing his duties centuries after his body returned to dust. Now imagine standing on the outer wall at midnight. The forest below is silent, the moonlight silver on the stones. Suddenly you hear the clang of footsteps, heavy, armored. The sound grows nearer. You strain your eyes and see the faint outline of a knight, walking steadily, guarding what he swore to keep safe. Would you call out, daring to speak to him, or would you stay silent, afraid he might turn and reveal a face that no longer belongs to the living? Skeptics dismiss these tales as family legends, meant to add romance and mystery to the castle's long history. They point out that Burg Eltz has survived precisely because it avoided bloodshed, unlike many of its neighbors. But others insist that the peace was bought by sacrifice, and that the souls who gave their lives still remain. Paranormal investigators describe cold breezes on the ramparts where no wind should reach, or strange glowing orbs caught on camera. Some say they have even recorded faint metallic clangs, like a sword striking against armor, though no one else was present. Burg Eltz today stands as one of Germany's most beloved castles, admired for its beauty and continuity. But beneath its fairy tale image lies the story of loyalty, honor, and spirits who may still walk its halls. So let me ask you, if you had the chance to walk Berg Eltz's walls at night, knowing a knight's ghost might stride past you on his eternal watch, would you dare, or would you step back, leaving the duty of centuries undisturbed? Just off the Venetian lagoon in Italy lies a small, abandoned island few dare to visit, Poveglia. From afar, it looks like a forgotten paradise, with crumbling buildings cloaked in ivy, and the Adriatic waters lapping at its shores. But behind its beauty is a history so grim that locals call it the Island of No Return. Plague pits, insane asylums, and restless spirits have given Poveglia its terrifying reputation as one of the most haunted places on Earth. Picture yourself approaching the island by boat. The ruins rise like broken teeth from the greenery. The silence is heavy, no birds sing, no fishermen cast their nets nearby. Locals refuse to step foot here. Even the water taxis avoid its shore. Poveglia's dark legacy began during the Black Death of the 14th century. The island was used as a quarantine station, where victims of plague were sent to die. Thousands were burned in mass graves, their ashes still mixed with the island's soil. Centuries later, during outbreaks of bubonic plague, Poveglia was used again, and more bodies were thrown into the pits. It is said the very earth of the island is made of human ash. In the 20th century, the island took another sinister turn. An asylum for the mentally ill was built atop the ruins. Patients reported seeing strange figures, hearing voices, and feeling watched. But instead of being comforted, they were dismissed as delusional. Rumors spread that a sadistic doctor conducted crude lobotomies here, drilling into skulls with primitive tools. He later went mad himself and, according to legend, threw himself or was pushed off the bell tower. His scream is said to echo on the wind to this day. Visitors who have braved the island report overwhelming dread. Some hear whispers in Italian, others see shadowy figures darting through the ruined hallways. Paranormal teams have recorded screams, cries for help, and even footsteps running across the hospital floors, though no one is there. One visitor claimed that as they stood in the bell tower, they felt hands shove them hard from behind, though they were alone. Now imagine standing among the ruins at dusk. The sky is crimson, the sea whispers against the stones. You step into the old asylum, the walls crumbling, the air reeking of mildew. Suddenly you hear it, a bell toll faint but clear, though the tower's bell has long been gone. Would you stay, straining to hear it again, or would you flee, certain the island itself is warning you to leave? Skeptics argue that Poveglia's legends are exaggerated, born of its tragic history and reinforced by Venice's love of Gothic tales. They point out that abandoned buildings naturally creak, and the island's isolation amplifies fear. Yet even skeptics admit that stepping onto Poveglia feels different, that the silence is oppressive, the air heavier, as though thousands of souls linger still. Today, Poveglia remains closed to the public, though thrill-seekers sometimes sneak in. The Italian government has attempted to auction the island, but no buyer has dared to restore it. Perhaps some places are meant to remain in silence, their ghosts unwilling to let go. So here's the question. If you had the chance to spend a night on Poveglia, surrounded by plague pits and haunted ruins, would you dare or would you keep your distance, leaving the island to the restless dead who still call it home? On the banks of the River Thames stands one of the most famous and infamous castles in the world, the Tower of London. Built by William the Conqueror in the 11th century, it has served as a royal palace, an armory, a prison, and a place of execution. Today, it is a landmark visited by millions, but behind its stone walls lie centuries of betrayal, bloodshed, and spirits who never left their posts or their torment. Imagine standing before the White Tower, its pale walls looming against the London sky. The yeoman warders or beefeaters guide visitors through stories of kings and queens, jewels and crowns. But when night falls and the tourists leave, the tower belongs to its ghosts. Among the most famous is Anne Boleyn, the ill-fated second wife of King Henry V. Accused of treason, she was beheaded on Tower Green in 1536. Her ghost has been seen carrying her severed head, gliding silently through the chapel of St. Peter ad Vincula. Witnesses claim they have felt her presence, a sudden chill, the faint rustle of silk, or the soft sob of a queen who met a bloody end. Then there are the princes in the tower, Edward V and his younger brother Richard, sons of King Edward IV. In 1483, the boys were placed in the tower for protection but vanished soon after. Many believe they were murdered by order of their uncle, Richard E. Their spirits are said to appear as pale children, holding hands, wandering the halls in sorrow. In 1674, bones of 2 children were discovered beneath a staircase, giving chilling weight to the legend. Other figures haunt the fortress too. The ghost of Lady Jane Grey, the 9 Days Queen, is said to drift across Tower Green where she was executed in 1554. Guards have reported seeing a headless spectre believed to be Margaret Pole, Countess of Salisbury, who was struck down on the scaffold in a gruesome execution where the axe fell 11 times. Even animals are not spared. The tower once housed a menagerie, and visitors have reported hearing phantom lions growl in the night. Now imagine standing alone in the bloody tower. The stones are cold, the air heavy. You turn a corner and see 2 small figures in gowns, their faces pale, their eyes filled with sorrow. Or perhaps in the chapel, you glimpse a woman in Tudor dress, her head cradled in her arms. Would you dare to step closer to confirm what you see, or would you retreat, unwilling to face centuries of grief staring back at you? Skeptics argue that the tower's haunted reputation is fueled by its bloody history. Any place where so many executions occurred will inspire ghost stories. Yet the sheer number of consistent reports from soldiers, guards, visitors, even clergy, makes it harder to dismiss. Too many claim to have seen, heard, or felt the same presences. The Tower of London today gleams as a UNESCO World Heritage Site, home to the crown jewels and parades of royal pageantry. But its stones remember blood, and some nights the ghosts of queens, princes, and prisoners still walk where they fell, their stories echoing louder than the river below. So here's the final question. If you were locked overnight inside the tower with the knowledge that Anne Boleyn, the princes, and countless others might walk beside you, would you brave the night, or would you beg to be released before the ghosts of England's past came to greet you?